I want to start with a story. I've got three kids, and my oldest is a daughter. She's now 25, but a story that's always stuck with me about her for several reasons, but specifically about communication, is we were riding in the car, and so this was probably right before she got her driver's license. So she was 15 or 16 years old, and I'm sure I was taking her to the high school to some kind of event, and we were talking in the car, and thought everything was going fine, and I was talking for a moment about like things that were coming up in our family. Honestly, I don't really remember what I was talking about, but I remember her response. So I was talking, and then I said to her, what do you think? And she said, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to what you were saying. I was thinking about me. and and first of all, you got to appreciate the self-awareness and the honesty there, right? Of just saying, hey, sorry, I wasn't listening to you, I was thinking about me. But the reality is that that's not just something that happens with our teenage daughters. We all do that all the time. Like when you are coming to this online Zoom conference today, you're walking into it and saying, I'm listening for stuff that's going to apply to me. You're not listening to just hear, oh, who's this guy, Steve Finkill, and what does he have to say? But you're saying, what do you have to say that might impact me? And that's the first thing that I wanted to start with here, and that's this: when you're thinking about communication, when you're thinking about how do I communicate well with churches, how do I platform opportunities for them within the association, how we could serve them, how we could come alongside of them. People don't want to know what you do. People want to know what you can do for them. And it's this goes along, if you're familiar with Donald Miller at all, and the work that he's been doing these last several years with StoryBrand. He has this idea that really we see in all these kind of mythological stories, right? I'm a Star Wars nut. I don't know if you can see behind me here, but I've got this little image of the Darth Vader helmet up there that one of my daughters gave me. But so I'm a Star Wars nut, and when you think about this relationship from the original Star Wars, the true Star Wars, but we won't get into that debate right now. But from the original Star Wars, you've got Luke, and he's the hero, right? He's the character that the whole story of that original trilogy really revolves around. But he would never have gotten started, and he certainly wouldn't have reached the heights that he reached, and accomplished the things that he accomplished without the help of Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? His guide. And so we've got this relationship between Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the thing for us to remember whenever we're communicating about anything to churches and church leaders is we are going to tend, and this is not like you're not alone in this challenge. All organizations, all companies have to intentionally avoid the trap of just talking about themselves. And this is what we do. And this is why what we do is so important, because that's what we love to talk about ourselves, right? And we default that way. But the value and the true value that we can bring to the churches that we serve is not by telling them what we do, but by telling them what we can do for them. So we have to learn that we're not the hero in that pastor story. The pastor is the hero. The church leaders are the heroes in their story. And how can we be those guides? How can we be those ones who come alongside and invite them to something bigger, help them to cultivate skills that they didn't know they had, or that they didn't know they had access to. And so if we can view ourselves not as the hero, but the hero maker, or the guide, that is going to completely shift all of our communication. So I'm going to give you two things that two very big ideas for how you can do a better job of talking like a hero maker to the churches that you serve. And as Chris mentioned, I've got a long history not only of working in churches myself, but coming alongside churches and helping them to tell their stories, but also helping them just to be more effective and more successful in raising up disciples of Jesus. And so what we want to do is we want to learn to talk like a hero maker, and there are two big shifts that I'm going to invite you to make in order to talk more like a hero maker. And the first one is this. You've got to shift from we to you. You've got to shift from talking about we to talking about you, and using that in, not to bring up any PTSD from high school English class, but we want to use that second that second tense, right? We're not going to say I or we. We're going to talk about you, and we're going to talk directly to the pastor and the church leader that we want to serve. Now, I don't know if I didn't have the full list. I didn't ask for it from the leadership team for this event, but I did some research before the event, and I went on several of your websites. So I don't know if the team from this that's going to recognize this language that I'm about to use as an example is on this call. So not trying to call anybody out. I'm not going to use your name, but this is language from an association website. It's probably a well-known association website. This is from their homepage, and they say, "Impact lives with us. We're biblically based, kingdom-focused, and mission-driven. We want to make a deeper impact that reaches our communities and the world." Now, the first thing I want to say is they're on the edge with that impact lives with us statement, right? Because remember, we're talking about how do we shift from talking about ourselves as the hero to the pastor as the hero? How can we talk like a hero maker? So they're not just saying we right off the bat. They are inviting leaders into something. So that is definitely a positive. Impact lives with us. However, then all of the supporting language is saying this is what we do as the association. And just in case you're missing it, I've pointed them out here for you. Impact lives with us. Even though that's an invitational statement, if you think about impact lives with us, we're still making ourselves the focus. We're still making ourselves kind of the main actor, the main hero, the subject of that sentence. We want you to impact lives with us. We're biblically based, kingdom focused, and missionally driven. We want to make a deeper impact that reaches our communities and the world. And now, again, this is not just a struggle that associations have, that denominations have. Every organization struggles with this. Full confession time. As I was preparing for this conversation, I went back and looked at the Future Church and denominee websites, and I made some changes. Okay, because all of us default to, hey, this is what we do, and we're excited about what we do can be helpful for you. But just that subtle switch, and sometimes not so subtle switch, of going from this is what we do to this is what we're asking and inviting you to do is a huge shift. So let me give you an example. So I've taken this this headline and supporting paragraph or supporting sentences, and I've adjusted it to make that shift from we to you. And here's just an example. See how this feels different. Before I go to that, let me read this again. Impact lives with us. We're biblically based, kingdom focused, and missionally driven. We want to make a deeper impact that reaches our communities and the world. Or they could say, maximize your impact. discover the most effective, biblically based, kingdom focused strategies being implemented by churches in the association right now. Learn more. And obviously that learn more is an invitation to click to say, here's now how you can do that. You can come to this event. You can set up a coaching call, or however it is that you equip and serve the leaders that are in your association. But you can, hopefully you can feel that difference of moving from a focus on we, where we are really kind of the primary subject, to where you are the primary subject. You are the one who is taking the action as the pastor, as the church leader that we're serving. So if you're going to talk like a hero maker, if you're going to really connect with people where they are, because remember, people don't really want to know what you do. They want to know how what you do can serve them. They want to know what you can do for them. You're going to have to start with this shift from we to you. So the first thing that I'm encouraging you to do is go and look at, just start with two things. Start with two things. The last email that you sent to your association list of leaders. Pull up that email and just literally go back to English grammar and say, who is the subject, and in most of these sentences and in most of our statements. So look at the last email that you sent to all of the churches in your association, and look at your association's homepage. And I'm not gonna, again, I'm protecting the innocent here, and not gonna call anybody out, but every one of the association websites that I went to, when it wasn't even just headlines like this example that we just talked about, right? It was also even like the buckets of how pastors could engage with associations were, even when they were nice verb words like collaborate or connect, those are okay. But then we also had care and coach. This is one website that I looked at. I also looked at another website that had all E words, and I can't remember exactly what they were, but it was like equip, encounter, and something else. Those are things that, like, the association is equipping the leader. So you're not inviting the leader to be equipped. You're saying we're equipping you. See, we is still the subject line. So when you flip that, and all of a sudden you're not saying we're going to coach or we're going to care, you're inviting them and saying you want to use those kind of terminologies that are making the association leader that you're talking to, they are the subject. Kim, I'm sorry if those examples, if that was from the Noonday Association, that's just one of the many that I looked at, and those words stood out in my head. So that's the first shift we want to make, right? If we're going to talk like a hero maker, if we're going to move from hero to guide, we've got to shift from we to you. So evaluate your homepage, those buckets and those actions that you're asking pastors and church leaders to take, and then just pull up the last email that you sent to association leaders, pastors in your network. Then the second shift that I'm going to invite you to make is this. We're going to shift from everyone to someone. We're going to shift from everyone to someone. Again, if you think about that image of Luke and Obi-Wan, right? Obi-Wan is talking directly to Luke. He didn't just kind of walk out and say, hey, anybody who wants to, you can come and I'm going to train you to be a Jedi and you can, take down the Empire. He makes a specific call to action to a specific person. And you're probably sitting there thinking, how in the world do I do that when I've got dozens, hundreds of pastors and church leaders that I am talking to. How do I make this shift from everyone to someone? Well, this is going to connect back to my friend Scott Kindig's presentation from earlier today. And thank you, Scott, for setting me up so well by talking about that smart segmentation, which I'm going to bring that up here in a second. But the first thing you want to do is segment your audience. And by segmenting your audience, all I'm talking about is at a very basic level, you want to build different lists within your email delivery program. Email, my guess is that email is one of the main ways that you are connecting with leaders in your churches, and that's fantastic. Email is still the way to go for this kind of communication. So you want to segment your audience into different email lists. Now, let me give you an example of how we do this at Future Church with the nominee. Some of you I know are a part of the Future Team Journey for associations, and you've been in that process, and we're going to be starting another wave of that in August, like Chris mentioned, and you can jump into that and hopefully get a lot of value for your association in that. But in that process right now, we have 176 leaders, okay? And that is spread over, I think it's 28 different associations at this point. So in our database, I have, for those 176 leaders who are all going through that same process, I have 7 different email lists. I have a list that's just the leaders. I have a list that's everyone, right? Then I have 5 lists because each of those 28 associations are in a separate cohort, right? And so there are 5 cohorts. So I have 7 lists for 176 people. And that allows me to target specific messaging to those specific groups. And now listen to me, you can do this however you send emails. So if you're in an association where you've got 50 churches or less, and you're like, Steve, I'm not using some big database program, I send through Gmail, right? Like, that's how I communicate with leaders. Great. In Gmail, you can set up groups, contact groups within your Google Contacts. And if I were you, and we'll look at the segments here in just a minute, but I would have, if you've got 50, just as an example, if you've got 50 different churches, or let's just say pastors, you're going to have more than 50 leaders probably on your email list if you're working with 50 churches. That's a separate conversation. But let's just talk about the pastors for a second. Those 50 pastors, I would have probably a minimum of 3, if not 5 different email lists of those 50 pastors. And many of those pastors are going to be on multiple lists because I'm going to create those lists based on the different messages and things that I want to get across. So going back to, this should look familiar, right? This is going back to what Scott presented. And I'm using this example because Scott just presented it, and because there are a lot of things about it that we like at Denominee. We think it brings a lot of value. But this is one way to segment your list. Now, I'm the communications guy, right? Like, Chris is probably over there going, Steve, don't tell them there are other ways to segment their churches. This is the best way. And I'm sure Chris could make that case for you. From a communication standpoint, this is one way that I would segment the churches. I would have an email list for each of these L1 through L5 and probably even L0. I would have 6 different lists for this that I would be updating and maintaining all the time. Like, when I'm talking with a pastor, I'm not just thinking about what I'm talking about right now. I go back later and I think through the conversation and say, you know what? I want to include them in more of these L2 emails that I'm sending out, more of these L2, L1 conversations that we're having based on where they are, their church is stronger than I knew about. And so I'm going to move them from that longing to that living category, the L3 to L2, so that they get different messaging from us. So this is one way to segment. Now, the other way to segment, and Scott talked a little bit about this as well, is size culture, right? That's kind of the one that we're all familiar with. Is just I'm gonna have an email list of all the church leaders or the pastors that lead churches that are 100 and under in normal, average weekend attendance. Then I'm going to have another list that's 100 to 200. Then I'm going to have another list that's 200 to 400. Now, here's the thing. Are there times where you're going to send to more than one list the same message? Absolutely. But by having them in those segments, you have the opportunity to tweak the message just a little bit based on who you're talking to. And those tweaks can make all the difference in how your message connects with that audience. Because remember, we're showing them we're not just saying here's what we do, but we're making very clear in the messaging and in the text that we write to them. We're making very, very clear about what we can do for them. Here's what we can do for you. And that message is going to be tweaked just a little bit depending on where they fall in this category and where they fall within that size culture conversation. So once you have your segments set up, and I say that almost like that's a one and done time. We are always I gave the example of, we've got 7 lists to talk to the 170 some leaders that are in the future team journey for associations. But we have, I don't know, 30,000 people in our database, and we have I don't even know how many different lists we have, so that we can specifically target different groups with different messages. And then every once in a while, we're going to send a message that's boom to everyone. And when I'm setting up that list in our system, then I'm just kind of saying, I'm adding all of these different lists, and I'm sending the same message to all of these different people. Now, once you've segmented your audience, you want to craft a you-focused message to each segment. So one of the things that I love about this, and I know that Scott's slides are available in the portal. The PDF of these slides that I'm going through right now, my slides, those are going to be available if they're not already there. So this chart, this smart segmentation table is in there, and you can see over here the strategy of what we want to say to those people is different depending on what category they're in. And Scott went into this a little bit from a leadership perspective. From my perspective as the communication guy, I'm going to craft the L1 and L2, the email that goes to the L1 and L2 leaders. I'm going to craft that differently. And if I'm inviting them to an event that everyone's coming to, I want to make sure, and this is where communication and leadership cross over, right? Because I'm going to make sure that I have something that I'm inviting those L1 and L2 leaders into where they can make a significant contribution to the conversation. I'm not inviting L1 and L2 leaders to something where I'm not asking them to have a collaborative discussion. There's going to be a piece, like if we're doing a day-long event like this, L1 and L2 leaders, I'm always going to say, and we've set up this separate time for churches who want to, have a networking conversation or a best practices conversation about the most effective strategies they're seeing right now for doing hybrid church, where it's some online, some in person, or the best the best kind of connection and follow-up that they're seeing happen with, because people aren't attending on the weekend as regularly as they used to. I'm going to invite those L1 and L2 leaders into a sub-conversation where I'm not just talking to them, but I'm inviting them to talk to each other. Because again, my strategy is different with those L1 and L2 leaders, where I'm saying, hey, I'm not saying I have all the answers, because I'm just the guide. You're the hero. I want to connect you with other heroes. I want to connect you with other people who are doing this, have been doing it, and are seeing success, so that you guys can learn from each other. So I'm gonna, if I'm inviting everyone to the same event, the people on my L1 and L2 list are getting a little tweak invite. They're getting invited to a lunch. They're getting invited to some kind of a breakout discussion that's specifically tailored to them. And then I'm going to have different messaging for L3, L4, and L5 because I know who I'm talking to, and I have the ability to, and it may just be a couple of sentences that are different out of each email that I sent. So it's not like I'm writing 5 completely different emails every time I send an email. I'm writing one email that has 3 versions, if that makes sense. So you're going to want to, you got to segment your audience, and you got to craft a you-focused message to each segment. And remember this whole idea, I've got it up there at the top. This is making the shift from everyone to someone. Because if you're talking to everyone, you're actually talking to no one. We all know when we get emails, we all scroll through our email inbox, just like these, the pastors and church leaders that we're serving do, and we can tell the difference between an email that is not specifically targeted for us, is not specifically speaking to our specific situation, our needs, our environment, our context, and we scroll right by it, we delete it, we archive it. That wasn't for me. But as soon as someone starts to use language that's saying, hey, Steve, I understand what you're going through, and let me help you in that, feels completely different. You may have noticed that a lot of organizations lately, we're doing the same thing with Future Church and Denominee. When you used to get marketing emails from larger organizations, they were these beautifully designed emails, right? And the ones that you get today that are still beautifully designed are from like Kohl's or Target or those kind of thing, where they're wanting to sell you their products. So here's the image big, here's the images, and here's the 10% off coupon, right? They're very just transactional. But organizations that are using email best practice right now, that are more in the consulting world, have shifted away from these overly designed emails to text-based emails again that feel more personal. They feel more personalized. Like I know, like many of you guys, you're on Carey Nieuwhof's email list, right? When you get an email from Carey Nieuwhof, yes, he's sending it to thousands of people, but he's written it in a way, the tone of the whole email feels like he's talking to me. Steve, I want you to listen to this latest podcast. Here's what it means for you and your ministry and your situation that you're in right now. That is the new best practice. This is why, and I mean, for association leaders, it's like, thank God that's best practice. You don't have to do these beautifully designed emails in order to be heard, because that's not what people are responding to or wanting from you anyway. They want to know that you understand who they are, that you understand something about the challenges and problems that they're facing specifically, and then say, you're not alone, we're here to help. If you can have that tone to the emails that you send, if you can have that tone to the messaging on your homepage when they come to your site, not that, hey, here's what we do, we are going to equip you, we are going to awaken you, we are going to coach you. If you can flip that language and say, and make it about, hey, help, we want to maximize your impact. maximize your impact, discover what's happening in the associations that, in churches in the association that are being the most effective and are seeing growth even in this new COVID reality. So that's frankly all I wanted to share. Keeping it short and sweet. We're going to make the shift from we to you, right? So I give you a little homework there if you choose to engage with that, and that's to evaluate your homepage and then evaluate the last email that you sent. And then we're going to make the shift from everyone to someone. And we're going to do the hard work of segmenting your audience, and you can do that no matter what email program you use. If you're using Gmail or you're just using Outlook, you can create those groups of contacts and send emails that way. Or if you're using MailChimp, one of these other kind of free email applications to blast out emails, don't just say, oh, I've got one big long list in MailChimp and that's my list. You want to have 5, 7, 10, 12, 15 different lists in MailChimp that allow you to craft a you-focused message for each segment.